Hey everyone, my name's HellPlatypus, and today I'm going to be taking a look at The Dungeoning, a recently released action platformer indie rogue-like dungeon crawly game that came out on Steam fairly recently. So, let's take a look at the options real quick. You can rebind your keyboard and controller buttons, and you can toggle full screen, turn music on or off, sounds on or off, so not a whole lot going on here. Can't change actual resolution or anything like that. Toggle full screen is about all you've got. But even though there isn't much here, it's serviceable. I mean, the game obviously doesn't require too many specific tweaks or settings considering its appearance, but I think it's pretty reasonable considering I'm fairly sure this is a one-man developer here. Maybe somebody else did the art or something, but maybe not. So what is this game? Like I said earlier, it's a dungeon crawler, and it's procedurally generated, and it's also an action platformer, so you've got a few different movements you can do. You can step back, do a jumping attack. It's a ghost. You can do a downward slash, and you can also block with your shield. Let's kill this guy real quick. Now you'll see that I took a lot of damage there. That took off a massive chunk of my health, and that's kind of the thing about this game, is a lot of people compare many of the elements in the game to Dark Souls, and actually if we go into my menu here and we look at the description of this item, we can see that it's got some little flavor text on it, and that's universal across the items in the game. So if I were to check this chest key here, or rather this door key, you can see that it's got this little bit of lore in its description, so that's one of the common parallels that you can draw to Dark Souls. Another one is the fact that you have this stamina system here, and your stamina drains whenever you attack and regenerates slower when your shield's raised, things like that. So the game definitely has some elements that it seems to borrow from Dark Souls, which is a good thing in my opinion. I love the Souls series, but let's see if we can kill this rat real quick. It's on kind of a weird platform. There we go. Can knock him off and then, okay. Taking a lot of damage here. The game's not, I mean, it's one of those games that's difficult, but not incredibly difficult, if you know what I mean. Like, you take a lot of damage, but so do your enemies. They can die fairly quickly, and health is kind of the definitive resource here. I mean, your health drains very, very, very swiftly. You can't take a huge amount of damage early on, but it's easy to avoid attacks. Now you can also lock onto enemies by hitting A by default, and you can see that my sword is kind of angled up now, and that's just kind of where your weapon goes once you lock on, so I can fire my little slingshot here at him, and if I were to unlock, it would just fire straight. So the lock-on system is fairly important for the range combat in the game, and as you can see, if my stamina gets low enough, I can mash the key all I want, but I won't be able to attack, so the stamina system is definitely very much like a Souls game, although I don't believe that you have too many negative effects for having low stamina other than just unable to attack. Alright, so obviously there are various status effects in the game, like poison, things like that, so you can use items to cure them, and I believe that hitting S, which is the default item use command, will just use whatever's the most appropriate. So I believe that that will just, you know, if you're poisoned, will automatically use an item that gets rid of poison. And now that's the end of the level here, and you can see these chests. There will be chests at the end of pretty much every level as far as I've seen. Everything's procedural, of course, but it seems to be pretty universal that there will be chests close to the end of the level most of the time, and you can usually get some goodies from those. So before we move on here, I want to look in here and look at this scroll. Scrolls are used to upgrade your stats and things like that, so let's see. Guaranteed to improve the health and outlook of the reader. Not entirely sure what that does. I suppose it just healed me, so there you go. Scrolls are little, usually they're stat boosts actually. So they're little spells contained in these, and sometimes they boost your stats, sometimes they heal you, things like that. And let's see, we leveled up as well, so we can improve our attributes in this menu. I'm just going to improve strength a little bit because, I don't know, damage is nice. And we'll move on. So you can probably see by this point whether you'll enjoy the game or not. I mean, it's roguelike, got procedurally generated levels. You've got decent enemy variety, and it's fairly difficult. Let's move on past this slime here, kill this other slime. Got a lot of little hazards in the level and a lot of enemies, so far it seems like the enemy variety is pretty good. These barrels will explode if you hit them, best not to. And I believe it's every 3 or 4, maybe even 5 floors, I didn't really keep track last time, you will enter a new type of area. So I've gone to this little, once you pass the dungeon section here, you'll end up in a little different area. And that definitely adds to the variety. I feel like it wouldn't be nearly as entertaining if it was just this tile set the entire time. Now, the exit's up there, but of course I'm going to move around, look for treasure. That's kind of the thing in this game, is that you definitely want to try to loot as much as you can in the levels, because the challenges ahead definitely it gets more challenging. It gets much tougher as time goes on, as you would expect from a game in general, but especially a roguelike. Kill this rat here, grab the chest, and level up. So the game's fairly simple. I mean, it's unfortunate that there isn't really much more for me to talk about in terms of mechanics here, because this really is all there is to it. You go through levels, you kill enemies, and you upgrade your statistics, and keep going. You try to go until you die. So from this point, it's probably just going to be more of a commentary on the gameplay, since I honestly can't think of anything else there is that I haven't covered. The game's very simple, but it's pretty enjoyable. Right now I believe it's about $8 on Steam, when it's 25% off, somewhere around there. So this is normally around a $10 to $12 game, which I think is a little bit too much for the content. I mean, the game's nice and it runs well, it looks fine, but I don't think that price point is perfect for this game, at least not for me, considering, and I feel like not for a lot of people out there, considering the type of content and the amount of content that you're getting. Although it's hard to compare everything to the golden standard of, say, The Binding of Isaac, where you can play that game for hundreds and hundreds of hours and it's incredibly cheap. It's kind of like comparing the Dota 2 payment method and free-to-play method to everything else, where Valve can just afford to make only cosmetic items, but nobody else can really do that. Alright. So it looks like every time you level up, you get that little stats in the bottom left there. It will tell you that you have stats available to spend. Stat points to spend. Green glowing ring. So enemies will drop random loot, and you can just see that for yourself here. I believe the rings are in the equip menu, so let's see. This kind ring was commonly gifted to children. It is imbued with a colorful magic stone that lights the way in the dark. Okay, so obviously the item description will tell you something, but then you also get this ring FX here in the corner, and this one gives you greenness, which I guess gives you a little green glowing light around you, so that could be useful if you find any darker areas, which I haven't in the game, so I'm not sure how useful that is, but it's something. Now, there are hidden areas in the levels as well, and this hidden area doesn't appear to have anything in particular. Just some bushes. Okay, that seems kind of useless. So there are hidden areas in the levels as well, and you can try to find your way through those. Find your way to them. I apologize if my commentary is kind of awful. It's kind of the first time I've done this, so I'm sure I'll improve over time. Let's see. Let's get my bow out here. I don't want to be near that, yep, near the barrel when it explodes. Kind of a weird Lovecraftian eyeball monster there. And I briefly displayed some of the moves in the beginning, but there's also this jumping attack that you can do, and that leaves you a bit more open and costs more stamina, but obviously does more damage. And then there's this downwards attack, kind of Smash Brothers Link style attack where you can bounce off of enemies' heads and things like that. Both fairly useful. This game has a lot of just kind of mastering the basic movements. Seems to be pretty common in action platformers, obviously, but you'll want to do that, especially in this game, considering how much damage you take from attacks, which is a lot. Healing items are fairly plentiful, though, so you don't have a huge amount to worry about, generally. Let's kill this bat over here. You kind of want to take things one at a time. It's almost like Spelunky in that sense, where you want to just look at the situation, assess it, and then perform what you need to perform in order to get past it. Like here I can see, oh, well, this isn't a very good scenario here, it's a single slime, but let's say there were a bat above him, maybe I would want to switch to my bow and take him out before attacking the slime. And I think that kind of challenge and gameplay generally comes in games like this, and a game like Spelunky, because of how much damage you take, and just how fragile you are. Now here you can see I've passed into the next zone, and this is kind of a weird industrial looking thing here. You've got pipes and brick everywhere. So these aren't just different like tiles and appearance, this also has completely new enemies and traps in the area, so that definitely varies things up and adds a little spice. And this area is a little bit darker. Oh, and that's a mimic, okay. So there are mimic enemies as well, and they're a pain in the ass. Let's get through there. And I'm stuck. Stuck in poison. That's not good. Let's try to get through here and open this chest. Box, rather. And then we'll kill the mimic. Or that slime, because I can't find the mimic. He must have fallen. Let's see. Can upgrade stats as well. Yeah, so as you can see at this point, you can probably tell whether you would enjoy the game or not. It's pretty fun. I still think it's a little bit too expensive for what it's offering, but overall the gameplay's fairly enjoyable. The controls are pretty tight, actually, which is something that I've got to give them a lot of credit for. You've got kind of this momentum when you run, and that adds a pretty big feeling of weight to your character. I'm making it look like I'm kind of awful at this game, and making it look way harder than it is, but it is fairly challenging, it's just not incredibly difficult. It's all about mastering how you move, that kind of thing. Well, I'm not doing nearly enough damage to him, so I'm just going to move on. At this point I think I've said my piece, so yeah, you can get it on Steam. It's, you know, $8 right now, will be more in the future. It's pretty enjoyable. Still don't think the price is worth it entirely. I'm repeating myself a lot here. And, yeah, procedurally generated. It's got some nice little mechanics. The art's fine. It's nothing, like, spectacular or really eye-grabbing, but it's nice. So, that's that, and I will see you next time.